Hey guys, so I just finished Barnyard on the GameCube, and honestly, this game was a lot more fun than I expected. But it's also one of those games where the charm and nostalgia definitely do a lot of the heavy lifting by the end. If you grew up with the movie, or if you remember seeing this game back in the day and never got around to it, Barnyard is kind of a weird little time capsule. It's goofy, it's clunky, it's repetitive at times, but it's also got a lot of personality. It feels like one of those old licensed games that was clearly made for fans of the movie first, but it still ended up having enough stuff to do that I kept wanting to see it through to the end. Now that I finished playing it, I want to talk about what I liked, what didn't hold up as well, and whether Barnyard is still worth playing today on the GameCube. If you never played it, Barnyard is basically an open area adventure game based on the movie, where you play as a cow you can customize running around the farm, doing missions, fighting enemies, playing mini games, and slowly unlocking more of the world as the story moves forward. And that's honestly one of the first things I liked about it. It actually follows the movie storyline. For a licensed game, I always appreciate when it feels connected to the thing it's based on, instead of just using a name and characters. If you like Barnyard the movie, there's definitely something cool about seeing the world turn into a game and getting to move around it yourself. It's not some huge open world or anything, but it gives you enough freedom to explore the barnyard and surrounding areas. And it has that early 2000 licensed game feel where the world is kind of simple, but still fun to run around because it's full of activities and side distractions. The biggest thing that stood out to me about Barnyard was how weird the combat is in the best possible way. You're out here fighting coyotes and other enemies by shooting milk out your udders like it's some kind of farmyard shooter. And that alone already tells you what kind of game this is. It's not trying to be serious, it's not trying to be deep. It's just embracing the ridiculous idea of a barnyard game and going all in on it. And I'll be honest, that made the combat way more entertaining than it possibly should have been. The milk mechanic is actually kind of funny as a gameplay system too, because you can't just spam it forever. You need to grab milk cans to recharge your ammo, so even though the combat isn't super complex, there's still a little bit of movement and resource management involved. It gives the fight a little more personality than if it was just button mashing all the time. Now with that being said, I wouldn't say that the combat is amazing by any means. It's definitely more of a fun novelty than a deep polished combat system. It works for the tone of the game, it gets the job done, and it gave me a lot of moments where I was just laughing at how ridiculous it was. But it's not the kind of gameplay you're playing for precision or depth. That's the kind of best way to describe Barnyard as a whole. It's goofy first, polished second. And honestly, I think that's fine. This isn't the kind of game I came into expecting some super refined combat system from. I came into it wanting a fun, weird Barnyard experience, and in that sense, it absolutely delivered. Another big part of Barnyard is the minigames, and early on I actually had a good time with them. They help give the game variety, and they fit the whole arcade-like vibe Barnyard has going on. Instead of the game being only about running around and doing story missions, you've also got these small activities breaking things up. The problem is that later in the game, the minigame starts to wear out their welcome. At first they're fun because they feel like a nice extra thing to do, but as the game goes on and you start repeating them more for missions, that's when the repetition really kicks in. It stops feeling like another cool mini game and starts feeling like a repetitive game. And that's probably my biggest criticism of Barnyard overall. I wouldn't say the repetition ruins the game, but I definitely felt in the later parts it's one of those games where the first chunk feels more fresh and playful and the end game starts to show its age a lot more. One thing I did enjoy pretty consistently was just running around the farm and surrounding areas. Barnyard isn't some massive world, but it still has enough space to make it feel like you're actually living in the movie setting. You've got the barn, the open farm areas, and other sections around that gradually become available as you progress. Some places are locked off until later, which gives the game a little bit more of that progression feeling, where the world slowly opens up the more you play. I like that because it gave me a reason to stay curious about what was next instead of feeling like I already seen everything right away. There's something simple but satisfying about being able to mess around in the barn during the day, explore the farm, do the missions, and then go back and interact with the social side of the game too. It gives Barnyard a more relaxed feeling compared to a lot of movie tie-in games that are basically just mission to mission with no room to breathe. That more open structure is probably one of the reasons the game still has some charm today. Even when the missions themselves get repetitive, the world at least has enough personality that it still feels fun to exist in for a while. Another thing I genuinely liked about Barnyard was the customization. Being able to make your own cow character already adds a lot of personality to the game, because it makes the experience feel a little more like your version of Barnyard instead of playing through a movie plot beat for beat as a preset character. For a GameCube era licensed game, I actually think that it's a really cool feature to have. And it doesn't stop there, because I also like that you can customize the barn itself with the furniture that you buy. That part of the game gives Barnyard its own little identity outside of just being the movie game. It has the fun side where you're not only doing missions and progressing the story, but also building up the barn and turning it into a party spot at night. That whole nighttime party vibe is one of the most memorable things about the game for me. It gives Barnyard the extra layer of charm that makes it feel more alive than expected. Instead of the barn being just a home base you pass through, it becomes part of the experience. For me, the customization side honestly helped the game stand out more. A lot of the licensed games from that era was just play the movie, beat the levels, done. Barnyard at least tries to give you somewhat of ownership over the world, and I think that makes it more memorable. Now, if I'm judging Barnyard as a modern game, yeah, it's definitely clunky. The movement, the combat, the mission structure, you can absolutely feel that this is an older GameCube game. It doesn't have the smoothness, speed, or polish of modern games, and there are definitely moments where it shows its age. Some of the controls feel a little awkward, some missions drag on, and repetition becomes hard to ignore the longer you play. So if someone goes into Barnyard expecting it to play like a modern open world action adventure game, they're probably going to bounce off it pretty fast. But I also think that's the kind of wrong way to approach it. Barnyard is one of those games where you have to meet it halfway and accept it for what it is. A goofy licensed GameCube game with charm, personality, and surprisingly fun ideas, even if its execution is rough around the edges. Because once you do that, I think there's still a good time to be had there. If I had to narrow down the stuff I like the most about Barnyard, it would probably be this: the goofy combat system, the open farm areas, the customization, the connection to the movie, and overall, the charm. At the same time, the biggest things holding it back for me were the repetition in the second half of the game, mini games getting reused too much for missions, the clunky feel compared to modern games, and some gameplay ideas not having enough depth to stay fresh the whole way through. None of that made me hate the game, but it definitely kept it from being one of those older games that feels timeless. Barnyard is fun, but that's if you're willing to accept the repetition and the age. So overall, after finishing Barnyard on the GameCube, I'd say this is a game that's worth playing, mostly for nostalgic reasons, but I don't mean that as an insult. I actually had a good time with the game. It's goofy, fun, and full of personality. The combat's ridiculous in a way that makes it memorable, the minigames are fun, even if they get repetitive later, the farm is enjoyable to explore, and the customizations honestly adds more to the game than I expected. On top of that, if you're a fan of the movie, there's something really cool about seeing that story turned into a playable world. But if you grew up with Barnyard, if you like going back to weird licensed GameCube games, or if you just want to play something goofy and charming that doesn't take itself seriously at all, I think there's still a lot of fun here. It's not some hidden masterpiece, but it's a fun little nostalgic ride that reminds you why these older movie time games can still be worth revisiting. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Barnyard for the GameCube after finishing it. If you played Barnyard before, let me know what you thought of it. And if there are any other older GameCube or licensed games you think I should check out, drop them in the comments too. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
There's something funny about that farm. I know there is. You can't fool me. No siree.